Psalm 121, a song of ascents. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. Help! I need somebody, not just anybody. I need the one. Help. Good morning, Monroe Presbyterian. It is great to be together again. We have been talking Psalms for the last few weeks, the greatest hits of the kingdom of heaven, we've called them. 150 songs and poems that are in our scriptures and were the Hebrew songbook back in their time and remain for us key pieces of our faith journey. And to hone in on the journey aspect of things, the last 2 weeks we've been talking about what are called the Psalms of Ascent. They are Psalms number 121 through 134. And they are songs, a collection of songs, that would have been sung by the people of Israel when they were on their way through the treacherous hills on their way to Jerusalem for the annual festivals. It was a long journey often, and everybody needs a little help on the journey. But what's key for us as believers and as children of God is to figure out, as the King James Version would say, from whence cometh our real help. Now, journeying ain't what it used to be. And as a matter of fact, it's changing really quickly even as I sit here speaking. I remember a time that should feel like yesterday, but it's actually 15 years ago. Back in 2006, Tani, my wife, and I, we were gifted what was for us a new van. It was a 2001 old Silhouette, and this thing was decked out. The following year, in 2007, we outfitted it and loaded it up for a long trip with our then very small children. Now, this van had everything you could want at the time. Keyless remote entry, automatic sliding doors. It had heated leather reclining seats that were electric, dual climate control both side to side and front to rear. CD, cassette, it still had a cassette player. FM and AM Bose stereo with controls on the steering wheel. It had a VCR that had a DVD optional plug-in and a screen that folded down out of the ceiling. Woo! Descending movies. It had reading lights in various locations and cup holders everywhere you look. It had flexible storage compartments, and it had a gas tank that allowed me to leave Norwood, Ohio, and not stop for gas until I was west of St. Louis, Missouri. Every dad knows how awesome that still is. It's still impressive. It had smart headlights that knew when to shine and when not to. It had seat belts and airbags to protect us in case of accident, and backup warning lights and sounds and all sorts of things to warn us of problems that could come from any direction. And then it had a GPS positioning OnStar system so that we wouldn't get lost. We thought this was a lap of luxury. Nothing could ever possibly get better. Fast forward to 2021, and just a few weeks ago, my buddy shows up to take me to lunch in his new Tesla 3. Now, I've had 3 or 4 friends who've had Teslas before, but I'd never been in one until just a couple of weeks ago. And if you've never been in one, the thing has no dashboard. It's just like a shelf. And there's a touch screen for everything. I mean, the glove box opens with a touch screen. So you have a touch screen in front of you. It looks sort of like a big old iPad Pro or a computer monitor. And then you have a Bluetooth phone app connected to it that you keep in your pocket. And you take the car and you plug it in to charge. And it's full electric and it'll run 300 and some miles on a charge. And it's powerful. It has an alarm system that grabs video of people and it tells them, yes, the car actually talks to them, if they've been getting too close or hanging out too close for too long. It says, back off. It opens, it locks itself, and it turns itself on and off based upon the proximity of its recognized owner. And everything's done by voice command. You can actually shop till you drop while you drive. It's got acceleration control and braking control so you don't hit anything and so you don't get run into. It'll do 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, and it parks itself. It'll actually, if it's raining and you don't want to go out in the rain to your car and you go out to the parking lot and you want to stand under the awning, this Tesla will come and get you. I've actually seen someone with their phone app hit the button and the thing backs out of a parking space in a crowded parking lot and drives by itself to pick you up. So you don't get wet. Have I mentioned it has autopilot, which my buddy tends to call cruise control on steroids? I mean, you can basically take a nap while this thing does its stuff. The car has everything under control. Your Tesla will never slumber nor sleep. Oh, and one last thing. It can open and close your garage door and manage your home while you're out on the road. I can't imagine that we would ever travel again without all of these helps. But back in the day of ancient Israel, it wasn't so comfortable. The journey to Jerusalem, as we have seen the last couple of weeks, was long, arduous, difficult. We didn't have Barney Olds yet, nor Elon Musk. There weren't many directional arrows along the path and no pavement, just rocky, sandy, dusty, or muddy trail. No rest areas to relieve yourself, no drive-through for refreshment, no hotel rooms or even cars to nap in, or cars that would make sure that your tent flaps were closed back at the house and the fire pits had been extinguished properly. Journeying was hard. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. A couple of weeks ago, we saw a video of what the journey from Jericho to Jerusalem looked like in these hills, and there are lots of hills, and it was difficult. And the Hebrew worshiper would truly see many physical dangers and difficulties in those hills. All of those things that we mentioned before, paths that you could slip off of and get hurt, sunstroke and moonstruck and thieves and bandits and serious threats against your life, because it was important to get to the house of the Lord, to take part in the presence of God. Now, one of the things we haven't considered yet is that along the way on the path up to Jerusalem, there were a lot of offers of help. You see, the region at the time was overrun by pagan worship. There were pagan shrines and groves that offered them shade and supposed comfort. Pay the sun priest a little bit for protection. Buy an amulet from the moon goddess. Go learn the magic formula to ward off mischief. And then there were a lot of these things popping up out of the ground. Asherah poles. Asherah poles were less than subtle tributes to the pagan fertility deity Baal. And if you were into that sort of thing, then sacred prostitutes could be provided to you in those hills. And having relationship with them was considered worship to enhance the land's fertility. And it might just happen to make you feel good too. God's prophets, though, spoke out to this idolatry. In the book of the prophet Jeremiah, in the 3rd chapter, the 23rd verse, in the English Standard Version, Jeremiah says this: "Truly the hills are a delusion, the orgies on the mountain." You see, the people had to remember that it's from God that we get our true help. And it was a good memory that helped them know this along the way. And these psalms of ascent, these songs that we sing together, remind us of God's provision and of God's aid and of God's way in these dangerous and deceptive hills in which you and I live and travel, just as our spiritual forefathers did in Israel. Now, fortunately for us, there is a long history that's been written down for us of God's help for God's people. Back in the day of Moses, thousands of years ago, Moses wrote these words in the book of Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter. He said, "There's no one like the God of Jeshurun," that's Jehovah, our God, "who rides on the heavens to help you, and on the clouds in his majesty. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will drive out your enemy before you, saying, 'Destroy him.' And so Israel will live in safety alone. Jacob's spring is secure in a land of grain and new wine, where the heavens drop dew. Blessed are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord. He is your shield and helper and your glorious sword. Some of you might remember that old hymn. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Last week, we read a psalm of David, where David described himself as hoping and waiting and longing for the Lord more than watchmen wait for the morning. I want to share with you a biblical story now of someone who waited and hoped in the Lord in that same way. Here's a little background to get us started. In your Old Testament, the books of 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles trace the history of God's people as they were being divided because of some sin of that very same King David we talked about last week. They were being divided into two kingdoms. Became known as Israel and Judah. Judah to the south and Israel to the north. And throughout their history, if you read those books, there are many, 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 many examples of looking for help in all the wrong places. But if you comb through, they are sprinkled in among some amazing moments of trust. Trust in God's promises and accounts of God's intervention on behalf of His people as their shield, their helper, their glorious sword. And in 2 Chronicles 20, where we're going to park for a bit, so if you want to open your Bible or your app and go with us, we'll be there for a little while. We see an account where three strong enemies have come against Judah and their king Jehoshaphat. And it turns out that Jehoshaphat was a really wise leader. In response to this three-pronged enemy attack, 2 Chronicles 20, verse 3, Jehoshaphat resolved to inquire of the Lord. And he proclaimed a fast for all of Judah, the whole nation. You know, we talked about fasting and prayer last week. The people of Judah came together to seek help from the Lord. Indeed, they came from every town in Judah to seek him. So rather than first gathering all of his weapons and chariots or Teslas and tanks, getting all the generals together to plot strategy, Jehoshaphat declares a fast. And it goes on for several days. And then Jehoshaphat is praying out loud in front of and with all of the people of Judah, and he declares God's sovereignty, and he reminds everyone that they had the Almighty as their help. And with everyone in the nation in a posture of worship, the Holy Spirit comes over a man named Jahaziel, and he speaks prophecy over the gathered nation. Verse 15. Listen, King Jehoshaphat and all who live in Judah and Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says to you. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army. For the battle's not yours, but God's. Tomorrow, march down against them. They will be climbing up by the path of Ziz, and you will find them at the end of the gorge in the desert of Jeruel. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions, stand firm, and see the deliverance the Lord will give you. That is a direct reference to Moses at the Red Sea. O Judah and Jerusalem, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Go out and face them tomorrow, and the Lord will be with you. And the worship continues. Verse 18, Jehoshaphat bowed with his face to the ground, and all of the people of Judah and Jerusalem fell down in worship before the Lord. Imagine if it were 2021, and the worship and the fasting went on this long. People would be looking at their watches and hoping for a bite to eat or something door-dashed in, and wondering why we weren't up preparing for the battle. But the story just gets further and further outside our understanding and our conventional wisdom. Verse 19. Then some Levites from the Kohathites and the Korahites stood up and praised the Lord, the God of Israel, with very loud voice. Early in the morning, they left for the desert of Tekoa. You remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the sons of Korah. They were Levites. Those were the priests of Israel, right? The sons of Korah. Who were the sons of Korah? Well, Korah actually was from the time of Moses. He was a doomed rebel, and he got swallowed up by the earth along with a bunch of his fellow insurrectionists. But that's another story, never mind. Anyway, his descendants, centuries later, became temple musicians. And we talked about them a few weeks ago when we did our top 10 of the Psalms. And their psalm writing was prolific, and they had a history of over 125 years as biblical songwriters. And in this moment, they are key players because the prep for battle was to sing and praise some worship music. Loud voices praising God. It seems like a pretty unorthodox, almost crazy military strategy, don't you think? Verse 19. After consulting the people, Jehoshaphat appointed men to sing to the Lord and to praise him for the splendor of his holiness as they went out at the head of the army, saying, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever." Can you imagine being a military leader, the king of a nation, and invaders are coming against you, and your response is to gather all the ranks together and lead out doing something that looks like this? No war movie I've ever seen used that technique, right? I'd never even heard of it before, except in this story. But the result, as we're about to find out, is nothing less than miraculous. Verse 22. As they began to sing in praise, listen close, listen to this. The Lord set ambushes against the men of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, who were invading Judah. And they were defeated. The men of Ammon and Moab rose up against the men from Mount Seir to destroy and annihilate them. After they finished slaughtering the men from Seir, they helped destroy one another. When the men of Judah came to the place that overlooks the desert and looked toward that vast army, they saw only dead bodies lying on the ground. No one had escaped. And so Jehoshaphat and his men went to carry off their plunder. And they found among them a great amount of equipment and clothing and also articles of value, more than they could take away. There was so much plunder, it took 3 days to collect it all. Whew. All of our help comes from the Lord. But sometimes it's hard to see through all the smoke, isn't it? Jeremiah again. Truly the hills are a delusion, the orgies on the mountains. Truly the Lord our God is the salvation of Israel. Let that sit on the screen for a sec. The orgies on the mountains. The Hebrew word, that root word, also means commotion. And as we, today, in this day and time, we work to find our footing on the path so that we can experience the kingdom of God in this day, there's a lot of commotion in the hills along the way, isn't there? dozens of smoke screens out in front of us all the time, 24/7, coming in through our pockets, our TVs, our computer screens. And those things offer us unity and freedom and belonging and identity and strength and acceptance and health and positive self-esteem, etc., etc., etc. And on and on and on. Blather their empty promises. Just pay a little bit here, ascribe to the right position there, and then roll up your sleeve and get the cure-all. We got your help. Liars. And some of them don't even do it on purpose. But they've been lied to enough that they believe those offers. The hills are a delusion. Only the Lord our God has salvation. And it is offered to us today in Jesus Christ, in Christ alone. And right now, in spite of all the other false offers, we, the children of God, disciples of Jesus Christ, are, as Moses called the Hebrews back in his day, a people saved by the Lord. Right now, in this moment, and on the path ahead of us, through the smoke in the hills and on into eternity, we are people saved by God, and Jesus is our help. Jesus is our help. And His presence in us by the Holy Spirit helps guide the way. It's our GPS. There's no other name. There's no other technologically advanced vehicle to get us where we want to go. There's no other philosophy, ideology, or remedy for what ails us. There are no other protections from the sin that tempts us and the enemies and the battles and the commotion that rage against us up in the hills. Just Jesus. God and God alone is our help. The psalmist says here that the Lord will watch over your coming and your going now and forevermore. My Oldsmobile got old. It rusted and died. My buddy's Tesla is going to have some sort of a software issue, or it's going to self-drive it into a ditch at some point because of a solar flare or a software glitch that interrupts a signal. Those things are helpful to a point and for a season. And along the way, as much as your friends and your family are a reflection of the love and grace of Jesus Christ and of the purity of God's Word and its truth, then they can support you and they can help you to some extent. But the thing is, as we journey together, we're struggling alongside each other, aren't we? The hills are confusing, a delusion, says Jeremiah. But here's the thing that Jehaziel said to the people of Judah. In the midst of being in a posture of worship, he said, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Go out and face them. So go on, go out and face your hills today, tomorrow, and every day thereafter. And just like he was with Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah, just like he was with the Hebrews on their way up to Jerusalem, the Lord will be with you. And when we go to the Lord for help and we go together and we're careful not to be looking for help in all the wrong places, and when we put ourselves on our knees in that posture of worship and we seek God's deliverance from the things that come against us, and we lift up our voices to sing His praise in a loud voice, miraculous things can and do and will happen. So go ahead, church. Let's march out. Lift up your eyes beyond the commotion in the hills and look to Christ. He is our only help and salvation.
I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not let your feet go out from under you. He who watches over you will not sleep. Listen.
Roll to the end here. Oh my God.
He who watches over Israel will not close his eyes or sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your safe cover at your right hand. The sun will not hurt you during the day, and the moon will not hurt you during the night. The Lord will keep you from all that is sinful. He will watch over your soul. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, now and forever.